Okay guys, it's cozy season. Autumn is finally in the air. I don't know about you, but this feels like good news to me. Autumn is a great season to curl up with a good book. To be honest, I don't actually discriminate against the seasons when it comes to reading. I like reading any time of year, but there is something about the change in the air, cozy vibes. You know, the days are getting a little bit shorter, so we've got the candles lit and it just feels super, super cozy to sit on the couch with a cup of tea or a glass of wine and just like dig deep into a book. So because of that, I thought it would be fun to share some of my recommendations for autumnal reading. Something that's different about this video compared to a lot of the other videos that I've seen is that I'm actually not including any fantasy or like spooky books or romance, and that's just because I'm not familiar with those genres. I like to read literary fiction. That's what I primarily read. So I have picked 11 books that I personally think make for great autumnal reading. Hopefully your reading taste lines up with mine so you can get some good recommendations, but I guess time will tell. I've split up the books into like some categories, sort of minimal categories, and the first one is very obvious. It is the academic setting. The first book that I'm going to talk about is an obvious choice. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. If you like dark academia, you've probably already read it, to be honest. I was gonna say if you like dark academia, this is for you, but if you like dark academia, you've probably read it. So essentially, this is in a university setting. It's about a boy or, you know, a teenager who has moved from California going to university in New England. And this is like a fish out of water sort of circumstance. You know, he's very bright. That's why he's going to this university, but he doesn't come from a lot of money and he's just never been to New England before. So it's like, you know, more East Coast kind of school, right? Is that East Coast? Anyways, very different setting than what he grew up with. And he very quickly gets drawn in. And he actually gets drawn into specifically this like seminar from a super charismatic classics professor. And he joins this seminar and then suddenly is in this group of, you know, hyper intelligent people that seem a little like too cool for school, you know what I mean? Sorry, excuse the cliche. And this group, they are obsessed with like beauty and knowledge. You know, they're all learning Latin, that kind of vibe. And unfortunately, this obsession that they have quickly turns to tragedy. She actually starts the book with the tragic incident, and then for the rest of the novel, we're trying to figure out what actually happened, you know, or what came to cause that incident and what truly happened. So yeah, it's dark, it's a thriller. Some people have said it's a thinking person's thriller. I know that sounds pretty pretentious and cheesy at the same time, but it actually is fun. Donna Tartt's writing is really great. Like her prose are absolutely beautiful. You do get sucked in and you want to figure out what's happening. You're kind of buying into like the academic setting as well, the exclusivity, all of that kind of stuff. These guys too, I mean, like there's a lot of money involved and whatnot, but yeah, it is a good thriller, and it's really nice, I think, to read in September for the back to school vibe. It's definitely a longer one though. In my book club, our theme for September was back to school, and we, you know, I pick books and then we vote on what book we want to read. I didn't include The Secret History even because I knew it wouldn't get picked because it is like 550 pages. So yeah, it's pretty lengthy, but if you're looking for a book that's going to keep you going for a little while, then maybe The Secret History is for you. The second book that I'm going to recommend was actually written in the 60s, but originally it wasn't overly well received. You know, it wasn't that popular. And then in like the early 2000s, it got a major resurgence. And that is Stoner by John Williams. It's funny because when I look at this book, I would assume that it's about drugs. And it's not at all. It's because it's called Stoner because the main character is named William Stoner. So it's about him, William Stoner. It's a story about a farm boy who goes to university and falls in love with academics. Stoner goes to the University of Missouri at 19 to study agriculture, and then later he becomes a teacher. He marries the wrong woman. His life is quiet, and after his death, his colleagues remember him rarely. This is a quiet story that really does focus around the mundane, you know, and like life's quiet disappointments, essentially. It's very introspective and deeply moving. And we're just following, you know, someone's life. That's kind of unremarkable, you know, but that's probably what makes it so relatable as well, is that, you know, so many of us are just living what you would deem as an unremarkable life. But that doesn't mean that it's a life without value. I really like what it says on the back, and then there's also just some really good quotes from some famous writers as well. So carrying on what it says on the back, yet with truthfulness, compassion, and intense power, this novel uncovers a story of universal value. Stoner tells of the conflicts, defeats, and victories of the human race that pass unrecorded by history and reclaims the significance of an individual life. A reading experience like no other, it is a novel to be savored. And then some quotes from some other major authors. So this is from Julian Barnes. He says, a terrific novel of echoing sadness. Yeah. And then the New York Times said, Stoner is a perfect novel, so well told and beautifully written, so deeply moving that it takes your breath away. This is actually the book that my book club is reading this month in September. Like I said earlier, our theme was back to school. We had 5 different books to choose from, and the girls chose to read this one. So yes, if you want to read along with us at our book club, then maybe pick this one up first and just get ready, I think, to be a little bit heartbroken and, you know, quietly moved, if that makes any sense. I wouldn't say that it's a page turner, but it is gripping. So yeah, Stoner by John Williams. By the way, hello, my name is Grace. I am a Canadian currently living in Dublin, Ireland. I live in a very small, very relatable apartment. I like to make videos that are, you know, like cozy vibes. I like it to feel like it's just you and me hanging out, you know, a couple of friends having a chat. And also, obviously, I really like to make videos about books. So yeah, if any of that sounds good to you, I would love if you'd subscribe. But in the meantime, let's get back to the books. So the next books that I'm going to talk about, I would put into the category of family and relationships. The first one I'm going to talk about is Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. This one also pretty hefty read. How many pages is it? It's nearly 400 pages. But it feels like a quicker read than like The Secret History. So Hello Beautiful follows a story of 4 sisters. And I mean, they actually compare themselves to Little Women, you know, like the famous novel Little Women. And it's interesting because we're following them from, you know, teenagehood until adulthood, you know, like well into adulthood. So it's like a sweeping family saga about these sisters and this man that enters their lives. And throughout the book, the book is actually from 3 different characters' perspectives. I like whenever books are told from multiple perspectives because it gives us a chance to really get to know the characters, because we perceive them, you know, we could perceive a person this one way because that's how one character sees them. But then as soon as we're actually inside their head, then we start to see them in a completely different light. So we don't realize that they're dealing with different emotions and whatever else. Anyways, so it's told from 2 sisters and then also the man's perspective. I mean, there's a lot of secrets and betrayals and love and like just complicated relationships in general. Here's a really good line on the back. Hello Beautiful is a profoundly moving portrait of what is possible when we choose to love someone not in spite of who they are, but because of it. For me, I really enjoyed this book. There was one character in particular, I wasn't really that keen on their perspective. So sometimes that put me off it a little bit, but I was glad that I pushed through that because actually as the story developed, it got really beautiful and very, very moving. I definitely cried. Doesn't mean that you're gonna cry. I don't know. Sometimes books, I do actually cry quite easily when reading. If you like stories that are about sisters, then 100% you should read this. And I do feel like it's nice to read, you know, cozy family dramas in the fall. So that's why I chose Hello Beautiful. The next book I chose is Crow Lake by Mary Lawson. Not a very pretty cover, but it is a good book. So this is actually set in rural Northern Ontario, and it's about, again, a family growing up and tearing each other apart, and then, you know, tragedies strike and what's going to happen after that sort of thing. The family is taking care of each other. The interesting thing with this book is that we're actually jumping timelines. So we see Kate, one of the main characters, as she is today. And again, it's an academic setting. She is, I think, learning to become a zoologist. Is that what it is? Yeah, no, she is a zoologist. And she is remembering her past and avoiding going home to where she was from, essentially. I mean, this story is very emotional, especially at the beginning, because that's when some tragedy strikes. We really are getting into the topic of family and, you know, what it feels like to feel like you're outgrowing your family, but then those deep connections that keep pulling you home, even if you don't really want to go home. I find that Mary Lawson is really good at capturing, you know, the beauty and harshness of small town life. And I really think that it's like quiet, reflective tone makes it a very good autumnal read. But yeah, this was pretty intense. Like, this family is really dealing in some tragic circumstances. I found it very compelling. I've read a few other books by Mary Lawson. I think if you like Elizabeth Strout or Donald Ryan, then you'll probably also really like Mary Lawson. So yeah. The next book I'm going to recommend is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This came out last year, I think. So you probably, if you're into literary fiction, you know, might have read it last year. You might have heard about it. If not, I'm going to give you a little brief now. So it's essentially a story about two brothers that are going through grief. Like, the main theme here is grief because they have recently lost their father. And these are adult brothers. One of them is, you know, a successful lawyer, and the other one was like a child prodigy chess player, and then now he's sort of like a socially awkward adult who is still known in the chess world, but he's trying to figure out jobs and relationships and stuff like that. They have very complicated personal lives, so we are also navigating those relationships. It's interesting because, again, this book is actually told from 3 different people's perspectives, and the two brothers, the way that Rooney writes from their perspective is so different, and I think she is doing this because they're both in such different places mentally. One of them, it can be quite tricky to follow his train of thought, and it's just because, like, he's a mess right now, you know, but he isn't really telling anyone that he's a mess. We don't know, if you're looking at him from the other person's perspective, you don't realize that this person is a mess. And then the other person is just going through their own things as well and trying to figure life out. A little excerpt, it says, "For two grieving brothers and the people that they love, this is a new interlude, a period of desire, despair, and possibility, a chance to find out how much one life might hold inside itself without breaking." So Sally Rooney has written several other novels like Conversation with Friends, Normal People, Beautiful World, Where Are You? She is a very popular writer, but a lot of people actually don't like her writing as well. They're not into her writing style, so it'd be interesting to see where you lie in it. Let me know if you've read any Sally Rooney books, whether you like them or not. I always enjoy her writing. I think that she is really good at getting inside people's heads and seeing the humans as just like the rawness that they are, you know, she presents them in a very honest way, and it can kind of feel a little bit cringy sometimes, but it's also super relatable. The main theme of this book is definitely grief and navigating grief. So that's something to be aware of when you're getting into it. I think, though, that because of that too, this is a good book for autumn reading, and especially like rainy days. So yeah. And it's set in Dublin. If you've been to Dublin before or Ireland, it's kind of fun to, you know, she always uses very specific examples or like says exactly where they are in the city and stuff like that. And that can be really fun to picture too. So yeah. Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Okay, so this next book, it still fits in the family category, but then it's also like nostalgia and time travel. So that is This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. If you like reflective and slightly wistful stories about memory and like what could have been, then this next book will probably be the one for you. The book discusses, like, if you could change your past, what future would you choose, essentially. So this is fun. This is about a 40-year-old or a woman who on her 40th birthday discovers that she can time travel. And it's about family because the most important relationship in her life is her relationship with her father, and he is ill. And whenever she's time traveling, we're kind of trying to figure that out. She's always trying to find more time with her dad, and if she changes this date, then what's going to happen? And I think what happens is, can she time travel to other places? I feel like she always goes back on her 16th birthday. I can't remember, but I feel like that's the case. She always goes back on her 16th birthday. And whenever she lives that day differently, her future always changes, you know? So it's interesting because it really gets into that topic of, you know, have things turned out in your life exactly as they should be. If you can choose an alternate life, is it ever going to really work out how you want it to be? You know, like, is the life that you've been given the best life that you're ever going to get, you know, or the one that you're most comfortable with, or the one that's meant to be? I really liked Emma's writing. It was, I mean, you're kind of dealing into like a quite interesting sort of serious topic, but she does it with humor and some lightheartedness as well, while still taking it seriously. And I liked the main character. I thought that she was very likable, and you're definitely rooting for her. Overall, I would say that the novel is like nostalgic and bittersweet. So yeah, if you like stories about time travel, I do highly recommend it. Okay, now we're going to jump into a bit of historical fiction. So for that, I have picked Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And I partially picked this because there's a film coming out very soon. It's coming out before Christmas, I think. And it's going to be a big one. It's going to be one of the big films, I think, for this year. So Hamnet is a book about Shakespeare, actually. So Hamnet is the name of William Shakespeare's son. So in this book, O'Farrell is imagining Shakespeare's life and centering it around the death of his son, Hamnet. So it's actually mostly, we're never in Shakespeare's head. This book isn't about, or like isn't from Shakespeare's perspective. It's actually more so about his wife. And it's really interesting because she's kind of like, you know, the untold story, you know, like the woman behind William Shakespeare, that kind of thing. She's telling the story that hasn't been told before, because Hamnet, the boy, like, his life was essentially all but forgotten, but his name was given to one of the most celebrated plays ever written. So it's very interesting. She's imagining what the family would have been experiencing at this stage of life when they lost their son. So we're inside Hamnet's head a little bit, and then also the mother. So obviously it's a period piece, you know, we're looking at what it was like when the plague hit during these times. The mother is a little bit witchy, you know, like she's supposed to be a bit of a healer. She works with like herbs and plant medicines and that kind of thing. And then of course the father is William Shakespeare. So we are getting to see William Shakespeare from other people's perspectives, which is really interesting. He is very young in it as well. So I think the wife is actually older than William Shakespeare. So that's interesting. We're kind of looking at that relationship. And yeah, I mean, a major theme in this, of course, is just grief again. So the grieving parents and family of Hamnet, but then also like the strength and resilience of mothers specifically. If you haven't seen the trailer yet, you should look it up. It's starring Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley. I know people in Ireland are really excited. Maggie O'Farrell is an Irish author, and then, you know, Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal are both Irish as well. So the people here are really excited for this film to come out. But yeah, I enjoyed this book. I also really liked The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, and she's written loads of other books. So if you do end up enjoying her writing, you know, that's great, because she's got a lot of books that you'll be able to read. There's something about historical fiction though that I do feel is really nice for like cozy, cool evenings. So yeah, that's why I chose Hamnet. I don't actually have a physical copy of the next book that I chose, but it is Still Life by Sarah Winman. The main theme or category I put this in is like chosen family and art. It's beginning in wartime Italy. A young soldier meets an art historian, and then their friendship, you know, ends up spanning decades throughout the book. Winman's writing is really beautiful in it. You know, it's very lush and detailed prose. I felt like I was escaping to Italy whenever I was reading it. And I found when she would talk about art and relationships and everything like that, very inspiring and very reflective. I've read a few other books by Sarah Winman as well, and I've enjoyed all of them, to be honest. So this would be another author. If you read this, you've got loads of other books to look forward to. So yeah, I think it came out a couple of years ago. I remember it was very popular quite recently, but I really enjoyed it. It's called Still Life by Sarah Winman. So the next book might be the coziest book in the video. and that is Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop. If you have ever dreamed of opening a small bookshop, then this is completely for you. It is not, like there's no big twists and turns or anything like this. This is a quiet book that is, again, very self-reflective and explores themes like work-life balance, redefining happiness, and just like figuring out what's really important. So it follows Young-ju, again, I hope I'm saying these names correctly, who, did everything she was supposed to do. Went to university, married a decent man, got a respectable job, and then it all fell apart. And she just gets totally burnt out. And she decides that she's going to quit her high-flying career and, follow her dream and open a bookshop. So we are exploring, we're seeing how that's working out for her. It's fun because you get to see how she is dealing with some of the challenges of owning and running a bookshop. Like, how is she actually going to make this successful so that it can remain open? We're seeing a lot of community elements, and then we're also just getting like the magic of books. She references a lot of other books in it because as a bookshop owner, she's recommending books to other people. She, holds book clubs and talks to authors, and there's, this community of people that just come into the bookshop and enjoy the space and get to, discuss things with each other. So it's about community and how to be happy, essentially. Like, they're really discussing what's actually important in life and how can we be happy. And it seems like, in the Korean culture, or what she's implying is that in the Korean culture, it's very much, you do everything, you got to be good, you got to work really hard, and then go to university, get the job, do all of these things. And then once you get the job, you're working. And all the characters in this book are trying to find deeper meanings rather than just working. Like, how can I enjoy my life? Are there hobbies I can do? How can I get some time for myself? And that's relevant, obviously, not just in Korean culture. I feel like this is relevant for everyone, especially at the moment. There's one character too, like a barista, and he is dealing with, like the lack of jobs in society. So he did everything right as well. He went to university, did all the things, but then he can't get a job. As a millennial, I feel like this is extremely relatable. My generation, very much, it felt like we all did those things. We tried really hard in high school, and then we went to university, and then a lot of us, like, there was no jobs after that. We did all the things right, but a lot of people still haven't bought the homes or done the things. And that's what we were sold as, like, the things that we had to do in order to be happy in life. It is not the path that I followed at all, and I'm really happy with the path that I have chosen. So yeah, anyways, this book has been really cute, really cozy, and just like a warm hug, like some really lovely vibes. They talk about the seasons a little bit because, there's changing seasons, so there are some like specific autumn vibes, but in general, it's more the feel of the book that I feel is very autumnal. The next book is also uplifting and has like a strong female lead, a little bit more into, like feminist vibes, and that is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie, what is her name? Bonnie Garmus. Again, this was a really popular book when it came out. Was it 2022? I don't know. It's been a good few years that this book has been out. And there's also a TV show, like a mini series. I think it's an Apple TV mini series about this, or based on this book. This follows Elizabeth Zott, who is this extraordinary woman. She's a chemist. She thinks differently. Something that's really important is that it's set in the early 1960s. And Elizabeth Zott is, surrounded by all men at Hastings Research Institute. There's a little bit of like a love story that we're experiencing here, but mostly the book is about Elizabeth and just how extraordinary she is and how much she values science and education and empowering women. So she's a scientist in the 1960s, and she is not treated well by her colleagues for the most part, in the workplace. And the way that her career progresses, somehow she ends up starting this cooking show on television. And in the cooking show, they're trying to get her to be very feminine and, teach women how to cook nice meals at home. But she takes a very scientific approach. The reason why she's so good at cooking is because she's extremely good at chemistry. And her show ends up being extremely empowering to women. And she just is a woman that cannot be censored. The producer may try to get her to say and do certain things, but she just won't do it. So yeah, this is a good story. I will say that when I started reading it, it felt a little bit slow to me maybe at first. Like I did have a hard time getting into it, and I actually put it down and started reading something else. But then when I picked it back up, I got really into it and then absolutely flew through the rest of the book. So yes, this is something that I think, this is going to be fun to read at any time of year, but I do think that it is cozy and inspiring and again, kind of nerdy as well. So that kind of makes it good for September or autumnal reading. The next book is one of my all-time favorite authors. It is Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. I did mention Elizabeth Strout earlier, I think. She's, like I said, one of my favorite authors of all time. Her stories are pretty much always set in small town, like in Maine, so East Coast America. And she follows like these small town characters. And throughout her books, there's a lot of repeating characters, but they're like companion books. You don't have to read any of them in certain orders. To be honest, I think all of her books make for great autumn reading. But this one specifically is primarily set in autumn. So you're getting a bit of like that vibe, like she'll talk about the trees changing and strolling around in small town Maine, that kind of thing. But this book is really about relationships. She does small town drama and relationships better than anyone. In this particular book, we're following Bob Burgess, who is a lawyer, and he is defending this man in the community that has been accused of killing his mother. So we're following that story, but then there's also Lucy Barton and Olive Kitteridge and a few other characters that are like, big characters in some of Elizabeth Strout's other books. Lucy and Bob will talk about their lives, their hopes and regrets, what might have been, And then Olive and Lucy, whenever they're getting together, they spend afternoons telling each other stories. And they specifically, this is very sweet, they're stories about people they have known, unrecorded lives, they call them. I don't really know how to get into it anymore, except that like this book has so much empathy and pathos, and I absolutely loved it. I think I read it in like a day or two, because anytime Elizabeth Strout comes out with a new book, I save it for a little bit and kind of coveting it, and then whenever I get into it, I just absolutely fly through it. So it actually could be hard to talk about after because I read it so quickly, but I know that I absolutely loved it. It's a little bit like we are kind of trying to figure out what happened regarding, the man that was accused and whatnot, but really more importantly, the book again is just about human beings and their relationships and like these small unrecorded moments that stick in our memory forever. Anyways, the novel is like quietly devastating, full of ordinary moments with extraordinary meaning. And I think that's the best way to like summarize Elizabeth Strout's writing in general. Very, very good for cozy evenings, or like I said, binge reading it all day, sitting on the couch, or maybe you go to a cafe or enjoy like the autumn trees. Do whatever you need to do. But Elizabeth Strout will definitely transport you to like a cozy and reflective space. Elizabeth Strout, Tell Me Everything. I highly recommend for September reading. So that wraps up my autumn recommendations. Of course, there's so many other books out there that would make for really good autumn reading, but those are the ones that when I was sitting down thinking about like what I've read recently that I would recommend for autumn reading, these are the ones that came into my head. Like I said, if you have any recommendations for me, like if you have read any of these books and thought like, oh, if you've read this one, then you're really going to love this one, please do let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking for recommendations. And also, as I mentioned, if you are a big fantasy reader, or if you like spooky, witchy books or anything like that that are really good for spooky season, October, please do let me know, because actually for my book club, I need to figure out what books we're going to vote on for October, and I am totally out of my depth This is not a category that I'm very familiar with. So yeah, let me know if you've got any good folklore or spooky or fantasy books, essentially, that would be good for reading in October. Originally, I was going to include some nonfiction books in this video as well, but then I actually thought it's going to work better for me to delve deep into 3 specific nonfiction books that I think are really inspiring creatively that you can read in September. So if I have already posted that video, I'm going to link it here at the end. If I haven't posted it, then stay tuned, hit the subscribe button because it will be coming very soon. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. I hope I made sense. I always feel like these videos are a good idea and then I'm like, oh, did I even say what I meant to say? It can be tricky, but at the end of the day, I do have a list, the full list down below, and I will stand behind my recommendations for all of them. So yeah, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. You guys are absolutely amazing. I hope to see you in the comments and whatnot down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.